This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 100, hitting the century mark. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is December 11th, 2014. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 100 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Yes, we did it! We hit the century mark. This is so exciting, and I want to thank you, everyone who is listening, whether you've been with us from the beginning or you just joined us. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting us reach this century mark and bring you the best of content marketing from week to week. And we have a special thank you to all our listeners. We are going to be giving you the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So stick with us. I will give you that information on how to enter at the end of the podcast. Okay, just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher. So if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. Now, this month is all about strategy here at Resonance Content Marketing, and you know, the end of the year, if December kind of snuck up on you, like it does on a lot of people, the good news is it's not too late. It is not too late to put together a killer content marketing strategy, and we're here to show you how to do that all month long. Anyway, in last week's episode, we talked about the ingredients that you need to pull together when you start building your strategy, much like a good chef gathers his or her ingredients before they start making a recipe. So if you happen to miss that episode, I invite you to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. But today we are taking a break from that monthly topic because we have a very special milestone to commemorate. This is our 100th episode. And to mark the occasion, we're going to have a little blast from the past, and we're going to relive some of our best interview moments that we've had over the past 99 weeks. I can't wrap my words around it. 99, yes, 100 episodes. Crazy. But first, we got some business to take care of. We're going to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. This week's top story actually comes out of Twitter. Seems our friends at Twitter are taking a little swipe at their rivals across the aisle, Instagram, by offering photo filters. Yes, they are Instagramming Twitter by letting you add some of those fancy filters to your photos. The feature is available on the Twitter mobile apps on iPhone and for Android. And all you do is after you snap the photo or after you upload the photo, you just tap on the thumbnail and that will bring up the options menu. And that will allow you to add filters a la Instagram and make some other edits. This is going to be interesting to see how this affects Instagram. Because, just for my own usage, I'm really not into the filters. I'm just about sharing photos, and I kind of figure everything on Instagram winds up on Twitter anyway. So that's been my take on it. But the folks who do enjoy using the filters and getting a little fancy with their photos, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, if they're going to stick with Instagram or if they're just going to go straight to Twitter to share those images. So we will have to see what happens there. Also, we have a new feature from Google+. Yes, Google+ is still around and it is still relevant. Google+, they're not, they have many virtues, but they're not always quickest on the draw. So they tend to lag a little bit behind Twitter and Facebook. And so Google+ has now added a feature that Facebook and Twitter have offered for a while, and that is the ability to pin posts to the top of your profile page. much like you can on Facebook and Twitter and also on LinkedIn. To use that feature, all you do is hover over the post and you will see a drop-down arrow in the upper right corner of that post. If you click on that arrow, it will bring up options. And one of those options is now Pin Post, which will tack that post to the top of your profile page. You know how Pin Posts work. Well, anyway, it's now available on Google+. And, as I mentioned, Google+ is still around. There's a lot of talk about how it's never caught on. I know the team leader who was over Google Plus at Google recently left. And what's going to happen with Google Plus, I don't know. But I do know one thing. It is still great for SEO. So until it dies completely, until they drive that last nail in the coffin and just shut down plus.google.com, I'm going to be on it. It's Google. Hello, why would you not be involved in something that Google is a part of? Because, they kind of own the SEO world. So that's my take on Google Plus. I am still posting to it. I get on it every chance I can to see what's going on and to share comments and things like that because, dude, it's Google. Okay, on to our content hit of the week. Oh, speaking of SEO, that is the theme of this week's chosen hit, and that is called The Top 7 SEO Trends That Will Dominate 2015. That is by Jason Demers, and it was published over at Forbes. And, I realize we don't talk a whole lot about SEO on this show. We've had a couple of great guests who talked about it, but, there are many other podcasts with people who have much greater expertise than I, who would do a much better job of explaining it. But as content marketers, we do need to keep SEO on our radar, and we do need to be aware of what's going on with it. So I like this post because it shares some very interesting insights, especially regarding the growing entwinement between SEO and content marketing, and how this author, Jason Demers, predicts they're going to entwine even further in 2015. Just as a side note, I know some folks who are diehard SEO guys, and if you were to go to them and ask what's the one thing I can do to boost my search mojo, I find them just shrugging their shoulders and saying, produce quality content on a regular basis. All the sneaky little tricks, the link building and the link farms and all that stuff. Google's gotten wise to that, and they've either started ignoring it or actually started penalizing some of those practices. And so it's really getting down to give the people what they want. And that's kind of the name of the game in SEO. So it'll be interesting to see how these two disciplines continue to grow together. Anyway, Jason Demers puts a very interesting spin on that. So I highly recommend this article, and I will provide a link to it in the blog post. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something that you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, a very special Spotlight segment. We are commemorating our 100th episode with a look back at some of our greatest hits. Wow. Just wow. Wow. That's really all I can say. It better not be all I can say because I've got the rest of a podcast to do. But, as I started approaching this 100th episode, the first thing I thought back to was when I started setting up this podcast and getting it set up and putting all the pieces in place. And I remember that moment when I was figuring out how to number the episodes. And I was thinking, should it be episode 01 or should it be 001? And I paused to think about that, thinking, wow, did I really expect to make it to 100 episodes? As committed as I was when I first started off, it was really hard to imagine actually putting in 100 episodes of this podcast. But lo and behold, here we are. And, just absolutely amazing. For those who haven't heard this story, let me give you a little background on how this little podcast came about. It was about this time back in 2012, and business had kind of slowed down, and I was really looking at, when business get slow. I do a lot of reading and a lot of research, kind of get caught up on things in a little bit more in depth than I usually can. And at that time, I was hearing a lot and reading about a renaissance in podcasting. Now, podcasting came along the 2005, 2006. And what happened was it got overshadowed by video when YouTube came on the scene. So it's always been around, but it kind of faded to the background for a little while. But anyway, in late 2012, there was starting to be a lot of buzz about a renaissance of podcasting. And it was something that I had always thought about because I love podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to them all the time. And I had always really thought about doing one of my own, but I thought it was too involved. I thought it was too technical. I thought you need too much equipment. I don't know what I thought about it. But as I read more and more back in late 2012, the first thought I was thinking, of course, was I need to start recommending this to my clients because clearly this is a trend that is really going somewhere. And then I remembered the pledge. The pledge that I made to myself and silently made to my clients when I started my business is that I will never recommend something for a client that I have not at least tried myself. So it was like, oh crap, I guess I have to try this at least. And what was the final straw was I started looking around at the podcasts that were out there, and I found that the name Content Marketing Podcast was actually not taken on iTunes. So that was my moment of, God kind of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, okay, rookie, you're up. You can get in there. So I bought myself a snowball microphone and set up shop and started recording podcasts. And I remember distinctly sitting behind this microphone, recording that first episode and just thinking, am I nuts? How the heck am I going to keep up with this? Because at the time, it was just me. These days, I have a team around me, but back then it was just me, running the business and creating the content and doing it all. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this going to happen? But, like so many other things in my business and my life, I just said, okay, Lord, I'm just going to do what's in front of me and just leave the future up to you. So that was 100 episodes ago, and it has been an incredible journey, and I can't wait to see what is up next. So, okay, enough about me. To commemorate this episode number 100, what I thought we'd do is go back and relive some of the best moments we've had with some of the incredibly wonderful experts who have visited the Content Marketing Podcast. And, as I looked through all the wonderful interviews that we've done over the last 99 episodes, I was like, okay, how do I even start to get my arms around this? We would have a 3-hour-long podcast if I really included all the wonderful insights. But I narrowed it down to 3. I picked out 3 real thought leaders in the content marketing world who were gracious enough to visit with us. So I want to share some excerpts from those interviews with you today. The first one is Baer. And of course, he's one of the key thought leaders in the content marketing world. And Baer was actually my first big name interview. And, I just kind of got the bee in my bonnet to contact him and ask him to be on the podcast. I knew he had a book coming up or a book that had recently come out, I believe. And all I did, I went to his website and I sent a message via his Contact Us page. And I literally got a response within hours. I think it was even over a weekend, which makes it even more amazing. But yeah, he responded right away, said, yeah, I'd love to be a guest. Let's go ahead and set it up. So he had just published his second book, Utility, and that's Youtility. Tremendous resource if you've not read it yet. And so, right now, we're going to listen to the segment where he explains what utility, with a Y, is and why it is vital to any marketer trying to survive in today's environment. He also reveals through the course of this snippet that he is a fan of Orange is the New Black. Who knew? And also how he made use of utility with a Y again, when making the decision to relocate his own family. I thought that was a great story. So let's sit back for a second and hear what Jay had to say when he visited the Content Marketing Podcast.
And I wrote the book relatively quickly. It was about 10 weeks or so I was able to make this one happen.
Okay, great. So just to get into the book itself, now just to clarify, anyone who is not familiar with the title, it's spelled Youtility. Tilaty.
Thank you.
Just in case you go searching for it by the wrong name. Can you describe in a nutshell what is utility spelled with a Y?
You bet. So it's utility, YO utility. The subtitle of the book is Why Smart Marketing is About Help, Not Hype. And that's really the point, that what you need to create is marketing that has enough inherent and intrinsic value that people would actually pay for it. Now, you're not going to charge people for it because it is, in fact, marketing, but it is so valuable that if you said, hey, would you guys kick in a couple of bucks for this? People would say, yeah, I absolutely would kick in a couple of bucks for this because it is that valuable. Lots and lots of examples of different types of companies making that work and making it work in different ways. But fundamentally, utility is about creating marketing that customers want instead of marketing that companies think they need.
Okay, great. So the first part of your book, you talk about the three facets of utility. Can you give us a quick overview of what those are?
Absolutely. There's really three categories of utility, sort of three main ways to do this. The first one is self-serve information, and it's based on the principle that customers want to hyper research everything today. It was true not that long ago. The old saying, "People don't want to see the sausage being made." That was true, right? But it's not true anymore. People do want to see the sausage being made, and there's lots of research that demonstrates that people are doing significantly more research for purchases of all types, not because they're more cautious, but because they have access to all this information. Rachel, I was watching a show last night with my wife on Netflix, Orange is the New Black, which is one of their new original series, which is hilarious. I totally recommend it. It's great. And so we're watching Orange is the New Black, and there's a secondary character on the show who I recognize. I'm like, what show was she on before? Where have I seen her? And I usually have a talent for recognizing actors and placing them in previous productions, but this one I couldn't figure out. So like most Americans, or at least the majority of Americans, I'm watching television with both an iPhone and an iPad on my lap, right? So I'm three-screened at that point. So I instantly go to IMDb, figure out her name, click, and look at her previous credits, and like, oh yeah, she was in the American Pie movies. I'm like, oh, of course. So that process took me, I don't know, 9 seconds. Something like that. And I talked to my wife about it afterwards, and I said, if this had happened maybe 10 years ago, number one, we wouldn't have been streaming Netflix, but more to the point, even if we were just watching broadcast television and you wanted to know, hey, what show was she on previously, you would have had to go to the library. Like literally the next morning, you'd have to get in the car, like cancel an appointment, go to the library, meet with a reference librarian. She would pull out a reference book, and you would flip through that to find out that she was in American Pie. Now, the reality is, unless you're like creepy stalker guy, you would never go through that much effort, right? It's just not worth it. So because we have high-speed internet access in our hand at all times now, there's no friction to learning. Like, why wouldn't you look something up? And the same is true in business. Consumers are looking up everything and they're researching everything. So the principle of self-serve information as it relates to utility really dictates that you have to supply manifestly more information about your products and services than you have in the past. It's the notion of the ultimate FAQ. Take every question that anybody has ever asked you about your business and what you offer and put it out there for people to consume.
Okay. And of course, the reference book that the librarian would be using would be 6 months old. So if you just watched it last night.
At best. Yep.
Exactly. So you quote in your book a lot of big brands that have really embraced utility wholeheartedly. You talk about Clorox and Charmin and Hilton Hotels, and they're all doing a fantastic job. In fact, I tested the Hilton Suggest, and I sent them a tweet saying, "Oh, just read about you guys in utility. You're doing a great job." And within 2 minutes, I had a response.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They are awesome. So, do you have to be a big brand to make utility work for your business?
No, not at all. Definitely not. In fact, if you think about the second type of utility, the second facet, which is radical transparency, kind of telling people everything that there is to know about you, but being very forthcoming about the truth and the fact that maybe you're not the right company in every circumstance. Marcus Sheridan, who co-owns River Pools and Spas, wrote the foreword to the book and really epitomizes that type of utility. His pool company, which installs in-ground fiberglass swimming pools, almost went out of business in 2009 during the recession because, if you can't buy food, you're probably not going to buy a pool. So they were in trouble, and they said, "Look, we got to find a way to make it, but we don't have any budget. What are we going to do?" And they said, "Well, what if we just answered every question and just did so really, really honestly?" And nobody had a better idea, so that's what they went with. And they wrote a blog, sat down and wrote a blog, and put together about 400 blog posts, wrote them nights and weekends. And now they have over 1,000 blog posts. And, this is a small company, handful of people. And now, not only did the company survive, but they thrived. They now get more website traffic than any other swimming pool website in the country, including the big manufacturers. Revenue is up 13%. Marketing expenses are down like 5,000% because they don't advertise anymore. They just educate through this very, very useful blog that tells you everything you need to know about swimming pools and is very candid and upfront about the fact that sometimes their product, fiberglass pools, is not the right solution.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we've got self-service and radical transparency. What is the third facet?
The third type of utility is real-time relevancy. Mm-hmm. And it's based on the notion that you're not going to be useful 24 hours a day because circumstances change, right? So what you're trying to accomplish oftentimes as a brand or as a company is to be massively useful in one set of circumstances, and then you sort of fade into the background. But then when those circumstances reoccur, the customer or prospective customer remembers, oh yeah, those guys can help me with that, and it bubbles back up to the surface. And I think Hilton Suggests is an excellent example of that, right? So, this program is started off with 25 cities. Now it's hundreds of cities. And Hilton doesn't really have any rules for this program. They just take people who actually have real jobs. This isn't a full-time job. It's people who do it on the side. And they ask them to just listen on Twitter. And if they can find an opportunity to help, just help about anything. And so they do. They just jump into conversations and connect people to resources wherever they actually have good information. And so the example we talk about in the book is there's a guy who moved to Nashville, and his dog was sick. And so he went on Twitter and said, "Hey, I just moved to Nashville. My dog is sick. What should I do?" And he didn't address that tweet to anybody. He certainly didn't address it to Hilton. He didn't address it to anybody. He was just tweeting into the wind, as we so often do. Mm-hmm. But Hilton was paying attention, and they said, "Oh, well, we can answer that question." So they tweet him back and say, "Oh, there's a great vet over at 13th and Q or whatever." And the guy's like, "Thanks," and takes his dog there. The dog's fine. Everybody's happy. It's great. And he gets back on Twitter and says, "Hey, I cannot believe that Hilton Hotels just used staff time and staff resources to recommend a vet to me." Obviously, that's outside their core product line. But it made an impact on him, and rightfully so. They helped him when he needed help, and they did so without expectation of immediate return. And so they were massively relevant at that moment in time. They were there when he needed them. And the next time he goes to a different city and he's traveling, he's going to think about Hilton. Now, does that mean he's going to be a Hilton customer for life and all that? No, probably not, but it certainly helps.
Absolutely. And speaking of moving to a new city, you yourself used some useful marketing when you relocated your family.
I did, yeah. People kind of can't believe this story, but it's true, which is one of the reasons I put it in the book. I live now in Bloomington, Indiana, in South Central Indiana, where the Indiana University is headquartered. If anybody has seen the movie Breaking Away, which won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay in the 70s, something like that, it's about the famous bicycle race, the Little 500. That's where I live now, and that bicycle race still happens, and I go every year. My wife and I had lived in Arizona most of our lives, and we decided that we wanted to kind of do more of a Midwestern college town experience. And so we used online research in the self-serve information notion that I mentioned earlier. We used a bunch of different databases where you can talk about, list, and rank order your preferences. Cost of living versus healthcare versus education, et cetera, tax rates, what have you. And we went on all these databases, and they kept recommending to us Bloomington. And I said, well, I've never been to Bloomington, but I'm an internet guy. Who am I to argue with a relational database? So we took the advice of the internet and came out here and spent some time with a realtor who I also, of course, found online, and spent 2, 3, 4 days walking around and looking at the town and fell in love with it and bought a house, and here we are. And that was three years ago next week, I think.
And the internet did not let you down.
It did not. It did not. But I didn't know anybody here. I didn't know a single person in this region, much less the town. What people have told me subsequently is like, I can't believe you would pick up your whole family and move, especially since you've lived in Arizona for 40 years, that you would move based on a database. And they said, was that some sort of like deep cover project from the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau? And I said, no, but that's a super good idea, right? I love that idea.
You know, one of the traditions that we started actually fairly early on in the podcast is the book study, selecting books that were directly or closely related to our work as content marketers and going through the book episode by episode and covering a different chapter each time and just kind of talking about it, commenting on it, and inviting discussion about how this affects content marketers. And I think the book study arose out of desperation one week. I had nothing for a topic. I had nothing to go. I was just empty. And I happened to look at my bookshelf and said, oh, why don't we do a book study? So those have been a lot of fun. And early in 2014, I decided to do a study on the book Fascinate by Sally Hogshead, because it's really, it's very closely related to what we do as content marketers, that fascination factor that we're all after. And it's funny, just as we were wrapping up that book study, I found out that Sally had a new book coming out. So I immediately contacted her and invited her to come on the show, and she graciously accepted. And so I'm going to play you a piece of that interview. And one of the themes that we keep coming back to here on the podcast, and that comes up all the time in content marketing circles, is the need to be yourself. You know, if we're all out there trying to be capital P professional, then we're going to sound all alike. What we really need to do is be authentic and be transparent and share who we really are. And that's going to help us build relationships with our audience. And I love the way Sally talks about this idea of being yourself, because as I put it when I spoke with her, it's like that first day of junior high when your parents say, "Oh, just be yourself, honey," and you're like, "Great, what does that even mean?" So Sally very eloquently talks about what that means and what we can actually do when we set out to be ourselves in our content marketing. So let's hear what she had to say. So Sally, just getting back to the content marketing world a little bit, something that I see so often, and I've been guilty of this myself, is that as content marketers, we get so wrapped up in being capital P professional that we start to all sound alike and just lose that personal touch. Do you see that as well?
No, I definitely, you know what? I totally do. And it happens for a few different reasons. All of us are content marketers in a sense. If we have a Twitter feed or a Facebook or YouTube channel, it's easy to want to go for the lowest common denominator because we think that that's safe. And so in some ways we want to make sure that we do it the right way. And so we all end up sounding like each other, which is actually more damaging than if we didn't post at all. It's better to not do something like social media or content marketing and bore your reader than to do nothing at all. Because if you ask for somebody's attention and you don't give them something in return that's valuable, either inspiration or insight or information, a fresh way of looking at things, if you don't add value in some way, you've disincentivized them from returning to you in the future. You know, it's better not to post than to post something boring, something that's just going to be seen as taking up space. Sure. Every time you communicate, you're either adding value or taking up space. So by understanding your archetype, by understanding how the world sees you at your best, it becomes very easy for you to have a roadmap to build your content in a way that's authentic and most fascinating based on who you are. And when you take the Fascination Advantage assessment, it gives you the 5 adjectives that describe who you are at your best. And once you know those 5 adjectives, it allows you to build content that becomes your brand. That's how you're going to be most effective in your communication style. So you can stop being all things to all people.
Phew, that's a relief.
Yeah, it really, it was a huge relief to me. I'm a professional speaker, and I used to think that there was a right way that I had to give a speech. And I looked at my role models, and the people who were doing well in the industry, and they had very different personalities than me. They had more prestige personalities. In other words, they were about higher standards. They were impeccable, flawless, sort of almost like porcelain. Non-porous, just like perfect delivery. Yeah. And so I tried that, and it was exhausting, and it wasn't successful, and I didn't get good reviews, and I wasn't authentic, and I couldn't connect with the audience. And so as soon as I started being a catalyst on stage, it was far more, first of all, energy giving. It was a wellspring for me, but that's how I really got in my groove and developed my speaking career. The same is true in content marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that as content marketers, we're constantly being told to be yourself. And it's about as helpful as that first day of junior high when mom boots you out of the car and says, just be yourself, honey.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Can I get some bullet points to explain that? Well, that's why originally when I created the assessment, people had their archetype, and they took the Fascination Advantage assessment. They got their report, gave them 15 pages of here's how the world sees you, describing exactly how people see them. But there was another step that was missing, and I always knew it was missing. And the step was this: what do you do about that? In other words, how exactly should you use that to channel your communication? So about 6 months ago, I had a breakthrough right when I was finishing the manuscript. And the breakthrough was that I could do for people, for individuals, exactly what I used to do for brands as a copywriter. When I worked with brands, I would help brands like Nike and Target and BMW and Coca-Cola. I would help brands find the perfect words to describe themselves. I didn't know how to do this for people, though, until we developed this program named The Anthem. And The Anthem is in the book. It's part 3 of the book. It's my absolute favorite part of the whole book. And when you create your anthem is the tagline for your personality. And anybody who's been in advertising is probably familiar with the term anthem. An anthem commercial is a heroic portrayal of who a brand is at its best. Nike's Just Do It. Yeah. An anthem is here's like the best way that we're most likely to emotionally connect with our audience. Well, you can have an anthem too. And your anthem combines the words from your Fascination Advantage report with words that are in the book. And so I'll give you an example. I give an example of 2 different travel writers. 2 travel writers could have completely different ways of communicating, and both of them could be equally successful. So let's say we have we have Joe and Mary, and Joe is perfectionistic, totally buttoned up. And when Joe does travel writing, he's going to go to every single location. He's going to do a thorough inspection. He's going to create a PowerPoint of his findings. He's going to triple check every single fact and phone number. So when it's published, his readers can feel totally confident that it is. Let's say his anthem is. I'm looking at my little matrix right now. I live with my archetype matrix in front of me. I'm going to say he's the ace. The ace is alert plus power. The 3 adjectives that describe the ace are decisive, tireless, and forthright. So I'm going to choose the word tireless. So the way Joe is going to add value is through being tireless. That's how he's different. But now let's take a look at what he does best. And for that, we'll bring in a noun. And let's say that the noun is investigation. So Joe's anthem would be that at his highest value, he delivers tireless investigation. And that's why his readers come to him, because they know that if they're going to take his word for it and travel to a certain place, that he will have done tireless investigation. That's who he is at his best. But now we have Mary. And let's say that Mary is a rock star. A rock star is primary innovation, secondary passion. The rock star is bold, artistic, and unorthodox. Mary would have a completely different approach to developing the content around this travel piece. She might find an exotic location. She'd find places that are off the beaten path. She would write using a lot of adjectives, really untraditional phrasing. She would inject a lot of her personality into it. She probably wouldn't be as good about triple checking every single fact. She would not be delivering tireless investigation. Instead, she'd be delivering something that was bold, artistic, and unorthodox. I'll choose unorthodox. That's her adjective that we're choosing in this story. We take that adjective, which describes how she's different, and we pair it with a noun that describes what she does best. So I'll choose the noun imagination. When we put those two words together, it's unorthodox imagination. Mary should try to find content development opportunities that allow her to have unorthodox imagination. And the more that an editor or a publisher can say to her, I need a writer who can deliver unorthodox imagination, Mary is totally set up to win in that situation. Joe will not be set up to win. Joe will feel very uncomfortable if an editor said to him, I'm looking for somebody who has bold, artistic, and unorthodox ideas. For him, that would be totally outside of his comfort zone, and he's very unlikely to be able to write a great piece that's going to engage readers. He engages in a very different way. So as content generators, all of us can see what's our natural voice. What is the natural language that we speak? Even if we're describing a brand, Rachel, you and I could be talking about the exact same brand, but have different words that we choose, different examples that we choose that would be appropriate to how we tend to communicate. And the best content-driven companies, the best content marketing people understand that content marketing is not the same as marketing. Marketing tends to be a brand message in which there's one headline that everybody agrees on, or there's one tagline that everybody agrees on, and it comes out of the marketing department, and it's much more formalized. Content marketing, on the other hand, I say this loosely, is human beings creating ideas, inspiration, insight, information around a brand or around an idea or a cause. And they have to infuse themselves into it in order for it to feel authentic to the reader. And if they don't, then the content marketer will soon become frustrated and demoralized, and the audience will feel that the brand is inauthentic. So whether you are an unorthodox, whether the way you deliver value is unorthodox imagination or tireless investigation, it's important for you to know how the world sees you at your best. And once you write your anthem, it becomes the roadmap for everything you create.
That is really exciting, Sally, because so often I hear from people, they say, well, everybody in my industry is already blogging. You know, why even bother? I'm just going to, but this provides us a way to say, okay, here's where I'm different. And that's what attracts people to you.
In any kind of a marketplace, especially a crowded marketplace, the brands that succeed understand a small but critical point of difference. A brand doesn't have to be radically different than the other brands on the shelf. It just has to be slightly different, and it has to identify that difference and then really own that difference and communicate that difference over and over and over again and become more of who it already is. You don't have to change who you are. You have to become more of who you are. So in the same way, yes, there are blogs out there. That's like saying there are already laundry detergents, or there's already software. There's already a laptop. Why do we need an Apple? It's about finding very small, very subtle, but crucial differences that are naturally embedded in our personality, and then communicate according to that. That's how we grow a ferociously loyal following.
Ferociously loyal. I've spoken like a true copywriter.
A catalyst. No, see, it's like ferociously loyal is definitely how a catalyst talks about stuff. Nothing is gray. Everything's full throttle.
There you go. And finally, I want to look back on my interview with the guy I like to call the godfather of content marketing as we know it. That, of course, is Joe Pulizzi of the Content Marketing Institute. And, you know, I'm convinced I would probably not be doing what I'm doing, and you might not be doing what you're doing, if it weren't for Joe evangelizing content marketing as he has done so well over so many years. And, you know, looking back, listening back to this interview, I realized what I love about Joe is his practical approach. You know, he's not just some guru spouting platitudes. He talks about real world issues like how to sell content marketing to your CEO who is all about the bottom line and things like that. Really meaty and practical advice that we can take into the office and use. It's funny, when I spoke to him, he had just come off the most recent Content Marketing World Conference. And if you're not familiar with those, they are huge conferences that take place in Cleveland, which is the home of the Content Marketing Institute. And those take place every September. So he had just come off the most recent conference, and he was launching his third book at the same time. This man's schedule must be just amazing. But anyway, he was gracious enough to make some time to chat with us about what else? About content marketing and a little bit about his book. So let's hear what Joe had to say.
There's so much of a need out there to put together a content marketing strategy A to Z. And there are a lot of amazing books out there on content marketing, but I didn't feel there was one that took somebody through why you need to do the strategy, build the strategy, and then actually show measurement to it, whether you're a business owner of a small company or whether you're a Fortune CMO, Fortune 500 CMO. That's really what we were going for, and hopefully we hit the nail on the head with that. And now it's just getting the word out to as many people as we can.
Absolutely. So who did you write this book for? Is it for the same audience? Is it for a different audience?
The original, it's funny, Rachel, the original thought was this was a startup book. I actually have the proposal that we sent to McGraw-Hill, who published this Epic Content Marketing. And it was really focused on entrepreneurs and startups. And as I started getting into it, I felt that we were going to miss a whole audience that this would be applicable for. So I really said, you know what, let's broaden it just a little bit. I'm the guy that talks about, even in the book, we talk about find your content niche. Yeah. And that's why I was like, boy, if we can hammer this home for startups, that would be fantastic. But then, you know, the majority of our audience at Content Marketing Institute are enterprise marketers. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, this will be silly for me to come out and say, oh, okay, it's not my normal audience. This is not for you. Mm-hmm. So I tried to write it in a way that would be applicable for any size, and which is not hard. It was just not easy to do. And I was actually quite worried about it. And as I had a few mentors that were reviewing chapters with me, I really said, no, this is really for any producer of content. Mm-hmm. And by the way, everyone on the brand side are producers of content. Mm-hmm. So we're like, well, how can we be amazing and epic producers of content? So just take it through the process. And I think what we realize is that the rules for content marketing are really no different for a one-person operation. Sure. Versus a 100,000 employees. The difference is from the enterprise side, there's so many political and integration issues, content management issues, localization and translation issues. We don't get into heavy hitting on a lot of that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of great books on that. So we're just like, here's the strategy. And I'm just hoping that anybody that's thinking about, boy, how should I be marketing to my customers and how can I create better customers, which is what my good friend and strategist Robert Rose always says, and I'm a real big believer in that. I think content marketing is a way to create better customers, and hopefully we've done that in this book.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And reading the introduction, and this is something that I seem to remember reading before, but you were using the word content marketing, the term content marketing, as far back as 2001. And I was thinking back, the internet itself was barely being adopted in 2001. What's it been like to watch this passion of yours turn into a worldwide marketing phenomenon?
Rachel, sometimes I just have to shake my head and just like, are you kidding me? And by the way, a whole lot of luck is involved. But probably more than that, it was determination. So just a little backstory on it, because I think it's important. I mean, when back in 2000, 2001, I used to sell content programs to B2B marketers. So I was talking with senior executives in marketing, chief marketing officers, and I used every term there was for what we were trying to sell: custom publishing, custom media, branded content, branded journalism, custom content, branded content, whatever. And content marketing was the only one that you'd get them to sort of sit up in their chair a little bit and listen to you. Everything else, frankly bored them. Like,
Okay.
I mean, custom publishing, that could be books. What the heck is custom content? What is custom media? Branded journalism. We're not journalists. That's not what we do. You get a lot of, but then if you say content marketing to a senior marketing executive, they automatically sit up and say, oh, well, if it's got marketing in it, it must be for me.
Right.
And that's really, I mean, I'm a marketer, so I can say this. We're very simplistic people.
Yes, we are.
So if you want something to take off in marketing, you better call it marketing. I mean, you really. So I'm just like, oh, okay, what's the best term to use? Content marketing. And I don't know if I was the first to use it, but probably we were the first organization to really get behind the term. So when I left Penton in 2007, I basically said, Penton Media, largest independent business publisher in North America. So I ran their content marketing and left. And my first blog post starting the business of what is now Content Marketing Institute was, why content marketing? And I just went into it, and I basically just told the story I just told you. And there was 2 years where I was not sure we were going to make it because it just didn't pick up. And for some reason in 09 and 10, wow, it just took off. And I think part of that is just focus and determination, because we put everything we had around that term. And everything we mentioned, we didn't say that, formerly known as custom publishing industry. We just said it like, this is the industry. And, by God, here we are, and everybody's calling it the industry. And frankly, this is not like, I'm not trying to say that this helped our business, even though it did. The best part about this is that all these marketers, these 700 marketers that were coming to content marketing world, and the people we have our community with online, they talk the same language now. Do you know how much easier it is to get stuff done when people actually know? Pawan Deshpande, who's the CEO of one of our sponsors, Curata, just told me, he said he did a presentation at Content Marketing World this year, and he didn't have to define the terms because people get it now. I mean, that's just being able that you and I can have a conversation about this, and you don't have to we can talk about what is content marketing, and there's a lot of different definitions out there, but inherently when you say content marketing, I think people get it.
Yeah, wonderful. Regarding the title of your book, Epic Content Marketing, I was reading in the introduction, you mentioned the definition of epic that you go by is of heroic or impressive proportions, as in an epic voyage. How does this definition of epic tie in with the message of the book?
I really believe that most organizations that create content for the purposes of attracting and retaining customers, they don't set their goals nearly high enough. We see too much Me Too content. Let's do the 5 tips post that our competitors have done 18 times. There's way too much similarity, and what we're not doing is we're not looking for the bigger story or what our unique story is. And I really feel that I didn't know if epic was the right, because it's sort of, of course, we got the whole Star Wars thing going on the cover of the book, and we're trying to make this thing big. We're trying to do what we tell our customers to do is make tell the bigger story. It's not just about you; it's about the bigger story for your customers. And I really believe that if you are going to be successful in content marketing, you have to be the leading expert in your niche, and you have to go big. You actually go big by going very super small and being the expert in that very small niche. And I think we set our standards and our sights too low because we're thinking like marketers too much. And if you're thinking like a publisher or a media company, you're always saying, look, this has to be the best. We've got to have the best take on this, the best story, the best resources, regardless of what financial investments you have. It doesn't matter. You always say, no, it's got to be the best, because you know why? We're competing with 5,000 other marketing messages that day, not just from what our competitors are throwing out there, Google and everything else. How are we going to cut through that clutter? It's got to be something special. So I think that's why I'm using epic, because I think that you really have to say, man, this is so critically important to our entire business. And you've got to take it seriously, and hopefully we'll get more marketers to do that.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the kind of the downside of content marketing really taking hold is like, you've got an e-newsletter? Great, I get 25 of those a day. What makes yours different?
Well, what's great about that is if you're the one that can cut through that clutter, that's wow. What an opportunity that your customers open the door to your message. And to get through that clutter it better be amazing, because I mean, you and I probably get hundreds of e-newsletters every week, and I let a couple in the door, right? And the rest go to trash or spam, or I unsubscribe or whatever. So it's got to be pretty darn special. And I think that's the way we have to think of it. And that means, really stopping to think like sales and marketing people, and really starting to think like, boy, if I'm a journalist, if I'm a storyteller, if I'm a publisher, what are those pain points, those informational needs that are keeping my customers up at night? And I better be the provider of those solutions for them.
Yep, definitely. There's another phrase that you use in the book that really brought a smile to my face, and it was change your stars. What does that phrase mean to you and to the audience that you wrote this book for?
Oh, geez. That comes from the Heath Ledger main character of A Knight's Tale. I was just the book almost. I'm like, what's the name of that movie? Because I just wrote about it. A Knight's Tale, and I love that movie. It's a feel good movie. Heath Ledger, who passed away, is the lead character in that. And the whole idea was he comes from modest upbringing, and he's able throughout the course of the movie, and from what his father said, was change your stars, change your path. And it's a story of hope, that no matter what happens to us or where we come from, we can make it in this world, and we can do great things. And that's what the Heath Ledger's character does. And I just love that. I mean, I use that in my personal life all the time and think about that. And then specifically with this book, what I love about the whole idea of marketing today is that there are no barriers to entry. Yeah. If you think about technology, you think about access to talent, you think about consumer level of accepting of your content, those things don't exist anymore, and they used to. I mean, when I started in publishing 15 years ago, if you wanted to set up a content management system online and actually put a publishing operation together, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, to put that together. We don't have those issues anymore, so really we can focus on building an audience through truly quality content and building, getting those conversations going through interactions in social media and other things. By the way, people should know that Epic Content Marketing isn't just about digital. I mean, we talk heavily about in-person events, which is a critical component. We talk heavily about print as well. That's a heavy component of the publication. But I just think that, we've got to market different. Don't worry that you've never done it before. Don't worry that you haven't been trained for this, because most companies we work with haven't been. But the opportunity is there, and it's up to you whether you want to seize it.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that there are so many different definitions of content marketing out there, and in the very first chapter, you go through a number of them. Why does it take so many words to define what it is we're talking about?
Well, I think I have like 18 definitions in there. Because I've tried to cover where people are coming from. If you were to ask me, if you were coming from a publishing background, I'd say, well, it's just brands now becoming publishers. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. If you are, if you're just in an elevator and I'm talking to you and you've never heard of marketing, or you're not in marketing or whatever, it's basically saying, well, instead of telling people you're a rock star, you're showing them you are a rock star. And that's, I think, the best way to do it. And then, of course, I've got the book definitions and the textbook definitions in there. So, hopefully of the 20 that I have in there, somebody's going to say, that's the one for me. And that's the same reason why I put a quote at the beginning of each chapter. I mean, sometimes it takes words from other people, and that's where most of those definitions come from, other people, to inspire you to action. So hopefully one of those will get it. But, all in all, it's the idea of, instead of interrupting my customers with messaging around other people's content, I'm going to say I'm going to work and put processes together to be the content, so that I can form a direct relationship and have a direct audience, and that's an asset for the organization, instead of continuing to rent the audience like I've been doing through sponsorship and how most organizations are set up.
Yep. I was happy to see that you included my favorite definition, which is it's the art of communicating with customers and prospects without selling. And when I first saw that, I think I read it on the CMI website, I was like, could it be that simple? I mean, if you think about it, even a birthday card is content marketing, right?
I guess you could look. I mean, you could make it as Rachel. You could make it as broad as you want to make it. I've got some people that really go out there and they'll look at pieces of art as content marketing and things like that. Frankly, I don't get into that very much. I look at more of it needs to be a consistent story told over. I mean, that's the big thing that most people leave out. It's the consistency. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Chipotle video that came out recently. I don't know if you've seen that where. There's been, they released a few weeks ago. There's been millions of people watched it. They talk about, being responsible as a maker of food and locally sourced food. And it's a 3.5-minute video. And people are asking me, is that content marketing? And I said, well, it's storytelling, no doubt about it. Is it content marketing? And I say, yes, it is now, but I wouldn't have said that way 2 years ago because now I see that there's an approach and there's a consistency to it because they started in 2011 with this. Now we're into 2013. This is multi-platform, and they are, they're doing it consistently. And I think that's what's sort of missing over everything else. And if you were to say to me, Joe, what's the biggest reason why most content marketing programs fail? I would say because they stop. The other thing is because we talk way too much. To your point, we talk way too much about our products and services most of the time. And we can't get out of our own way. If you look at most content in an organization, 99% is about our products and services. Well, we've got to realize our customers don't care about anything we have to sell. They only care about themselves. So we better, create that relationship with that kind of content. And that's actually, to your point, that's not really selling. It doesn't ever feel. That's the great thing about this content marketing. Even though it is marketing and you really are selling, it should never really feel like selling.
Absolutely. Another thing that I found was interesting and that I've not seen in other content marketing books is that you devote an entire chapter to making the business case for content marketing. So this would be for, maybe the director of marketing who's trying to upsell a content marketing program. Why do you think content marketing is such a tough sell for so many CEOs out there?
There are not many senior level people out there that were at least on the marketing side, that were trained in journalism and storytelling. I mean, they came from the 4Ps background, very traditional, either PR or marketing or sales background. And what we're finding and what I see clearly, especially coming from the last content marketing world, this is a huge issue in change management. Companies are not set up to do anything like what we're talking about. So that's why a lot of it is in pockets. It's experimental. It works outside the silos of most organizations, and that's fine. I mean, we need to make the progress, and that's where we need to go one step at a time. But most of the CEOs or owners you talk to, they immediately think, oh, we're talking Facebook, you're talking social media. That's not going to that's not going to build my business. I'm not going to get more revenue off of it. And that's where I want to get to the book and quickly go through, look, if you're doing content marketing, your objectives, I'm not talking about reader outcomes right now. I'm talking about marketing objectives. Your metrics should be built on 3. 1 is, are we increasing sales? 2 is, are we lowering costs? And 3, are we creating happier customers, thus improving our sales? If your objectives have to go around those, and that's why when we get to the business case, we really have to focus on that and say, look, this is not all fun and games. This is not just doing blog posts and people are going to share it. It's not all about online engagement. This is about real revenue and profit. And I believe strongly in that if you really have a content strategy at the center of your marketing today, if you're looking at, it's pivotal, critical for SEO, for demand generation, for lead generation online. You can't have social media work without a content strategy and have something that is interesting to your customers that's ultimately going to drive your business. So I think that they're just not they're not used to it. So I've got to make sure that if a senior marketer, a marketing manager, a business owner, whatever, social media manager gets this book, they're going to be all excited about it and want to do it, and then they're going to hit a brick wall because somebody's going to say, "No, that's not the way we run," or "We haven't done it this way for forever," or we don't work this way. You've got to give them some ammunition. So hopefully that chapter does that.
So there you have it. Excerpts from my top 3 greatest hits interviews over the past 99 episodes. And, as I mentioned, we have had so many terrific interviews, so many great experts, some people you might not have even heard of, but had just tremendous insights on some aspect of our work as content marketers. It's been such a privilege to bring you these insights from just some of the top minds of our industry. And I encourage you, if you have a moment, just start looking through some of our past podcasts to see some of the wonderful experts we've had on the show and some of the great topics they have brought in that I could never have covered adequately on my own. I mean, that's the beauty of collaboration. That's why I'm so thrilled when we hook a great interview. So, and then I want to invite you to contribute your ideas for future interviews. If there's a thought leader out there you really want to hear from, let me know. I'll contact them and see what we can do about getting them on the show. Would love to do that. Okay, now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to stay in the theme of our milestone 100th episode by talking a little bit about commitment and consistency. And, as the owner of a content marketing agency, I work with a lot of clients who, when I really sit down and talk with them, it turns out they're looking for a magic bullet. They think of content marketing as a campaign, something you're going to put out there and you're going to, work like crazy for a few months, and then you're going to sit back and let the money start rolling in. And, I try to explain how content marketing works, and sometimes they're just not a fit for us because that's not how content marketing works, and I can't in good conscience sign them up as a client. But, I can tell you after 100 episodes of this podcast, plus Lord knows how many blog posts and videos and over 11,000 tweets and Lord knows how many Facebook posts, whatever. I can tell you this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes time. It takes time to get noticed. It takes time to build an audience. It takes time to build trust and respect. But I will tell you the good news. The good news is if you have nothing more than commitment and consistency, you're already ahead of your competition because not everybody is in this game for the long haul. They get really fired up at the beginning and they're all gung-ho, and then they either get tired of it or they get frustrated if they don't see the results right away. And God help their content marketing program if budget cuts roll around. I mean, that's usually the first ones to go. So I just want to say if you are passionate about content marketing and maybe you're just getting into it and you're not seeing results right away, you're feeling a little discouraged, do stay the course. Do stick with it. The rewards will come and the rewards are fantastic. Okay, campers, before I sign off, I promised I would give you a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card to commemorate our 100th episode, and I'm going to tell you how to do that right now. We're going to be holding a drawing for this gift card, and to find out how you can enter, go to resonancecontent.com/100. Again, that's Resonance Content, ResonanceContent.com/100. We are going to be, and you can find out how you can enter there. We will be taking entries until December 18th, and we will announce the winner on the 25th. So yes, someone will get an extra Christmas present this year, and it will come from us. Okay, if you like what you've heard today on the Content Marketing Podcast, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. And I do want to thank everyone who has put up those reviews. I really appreciate it. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. If you'd like to submit a question to cover in an upcoming tip of the week, just go to askrachelparker.com, type in your question, and we'll get it answered for you. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from none other than Buddha. He once said, quote, "Endurance is one of the most difficult disciplines, but it is to the one who endures that the final victory comes." Unquote. Just remember that when you start, when your energy starts flagging and you're tempted to give up your content marketing program. Don't give up. Keep on keeping on. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.